So, how are you enjoying your study of law? I am beginning to seriously regret having decided to come to law school. Why is that? Well, the workload is enormous, the tuition is high, and from what everyone tells me, there is no realistic chance of me getting a job after all of this. Clearly you are being pessimistic. A law degree opens the doors for all kinds of things. You can work at a firm, go into politics, or you can become a professor like myself. That is what the nice people in the admissions office told me. The trouble is, only those damned overachievers in the top of the class are going to get well-paying firm jobs. I don't have the connections to get into politics, and quite frankly, once I graduate, I have no intention of ever stepping foot into a law school again. At this rate I am just going to wind up as a public defender or being a legal aid attorney, with long hours and little financial reward. What is wrong with that? It sounds like you would be helping people in need. I did not come to law school to be a glorified volunteer. I do not mind helping people, but when I enrolled under the assumption that JD stood for just dollars. All it stands for these days is jobless debt. I have already come to terms with the fact I will not be making a lot of money. Now I just hope I will be making enough to live on and manage my debt. Well, at least you are learning valuable critical thinking skills, sound logical reasoning, and how to analyze issues of public policy. While certainly helpful in the classroom and in convincing potential dates that I am more intelligent than I really am, all of the lawyers I talk to tell me that the vast majority of law school graduates leave the school not knowing how to practice law. One even went so far as to say that a law school education is nothing more than a 3-year bar prep course. You seem to be developing a rather cynical view of things. I know. The trouble is, with all of the seemingly fruitless effort I put in, the long hours on outlines, making sure I understand footnotes that refer to rules in jurisdictions I never intend on practicing in, and hours put into extracurriculars in the hopes potential employers give a damn, I just feel sort of drained. I spend what little free time I have taking out my frustrations on my liver, and browsing the internet for third world countries to hide from debt collectors in. If that is the case, why are you staying around? Well, I have already invested this much time, and this much money into the whole process, and I am afraid that potential employers will see dropping out of law school as a sign of laziness. My family is convinced that I'm going to save the world one day, and all of my old friends are convinced that I will have the skill to get them out of jail if they need it. My one comfort is logging onto Facebook to hear about how miserable all of my fellow students are. It reminds me that I'm not alone in my misery. Well, this whole conversation has been very revealing, which brings me to another frustration. With so many of these classes, it seems as though the professor is simply dancing around the main idea. It is my opinion that law school would be much more beneficial if professors would reveal a bit more to us, rather than have us try and figure out the relevance of catching foxes, or leaving us to figure out on our own that Pennoyer versus Neff is completely outdated. Well, that is how law schools have been teaching for over a century. L'Engle revolutionized the teaching of law in 1870 with the casebook method. Besides, I love watching students panic over how Byzantine Pennoyer is. Why fix something that is not broken? It would seem that given a century, we would have made some kind of progress, and applied modern teaching breakthroughs. This old-fashioned method of teaching law is not preparing students for the demands of modern practice, and many hiring firms complain about this problem. Well, how would you propose we fix this problem? It would seem as though giving students more practical training would be a good start. Med students are required to get experience as interns, pilots need to clock a certain amount of flight time, and even my massage therapist who has been instrumental in me not having a breakdown had to have more practical training for certification than I will get from law school. We are helping you think like a lawyer though. Certainly that is of value. I believe that thinking like a lawyer was sufficiently beaten into me by the end of the first year, as pleasant as that whole experience was. What I would like to be able to do when I leave here is to actually practice law. The last thing I want when I am sitting on the operating table is to have some recent med school grad who is medically ignorant, but can think like a doctor. Despite having taken a class on business organizations, if a client came to me and asked for help with an incorporation, at best I could refer him to someone with more experience, or worse, I could expose myself to malpractice liability by trying to just figure it out myself. Well, hopefully this angst of yours will pass. You will need to be in high spirits to do well on your coming final. Don't worry though, it is only 90% of your grade, so your participation grade should give you a little bit of an edge. If only. My participation has been minimal due to my fear of being ridiculed should my answer not be spot on, so now I do not even have a realistic chance of getting above a B on the final. I suppose that means I should get back to the outline I copied from last year's book award winner in the hopes that her award was not a fluke. Not that I will be able to memorize all of that information for the final anyways. At least I have some booze back home for after the fact. Fuck my life.